All right. How we doing? Oh, hold on. Technical difficulties. Give me one moment. Oh. How we doing? How we doing, everybody? Can you guys hear me? Because I know I got all avenues in terms of the mic good. So let me hear W's in the chat if you guys can hear me while I gotta fix this issue real quick with the live chat. Give me one moment. And there we go. All right, got that going. Woo! Audio was good. Love to hear it. You know, after our first two blunders, I I always have to make sure now after our first two blunders how the live chat is. But hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to this episode of the Cutline. I'm your host, Armani DePaul, and we just had a pretty exciting finish at Phoenix Raceway. We're going to talk about that and a lot more on this episode. And before we get started, I want to go ahead and bring on today's guest. Now, he was on the first episode of the Cutline back during the Clash episode, and he's coming back on. If you've seen him if you've been on NASCAR Twitter, you obviously know who this guy is. He's on TikTok as well. He was just at Anderson Speedway interviewing Ryan Newman. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for my man William Richard, aka NASCAR Opinion. What's up, man?
What's going on, Armani? Good to see you, my friend. Always good to chat with you. And obviously, we just got done watching a somewhat of a race, I guess you could call it, at Phoenix. We've seen worse. We've seen better. I think, obviously we'll get into that. But I'm doing well. I hope you're doing great as well. We're going to see what's above and below the cut line today.
Absolutely, yeah. We'll get to what I thought about the race, with the race weekend rankings later on. But, yeah, before we get started, let's just look at the chat real quick, see what everyone's going. On it, yep, it's nothing. You're right. It's a miracle that my mic actually works for once. Obviously, if you guys were here at the first two episodes, I forgot to unmute the mic, but here we are. Also, got a little different background this time around, so I don't know if you guys have noticed it, but before there used to be diecast here. Obviously, you guys can't see me, but I moved my Dale Jr. Daytona 500 plaque onto this side, and shout out to my mom. She got me this. This is so this poster, you can't really see it here. Let me see if I can actually maybe change the camera real quick. So here you go. So obviously there's a little bit of a glare, obviously with the ring light. We'll get that fixed later on. But so this is from 1996 from the Brickyard 400. I believe this is Ricky Craven when he drove the 25 car for Hendrick Motorsports. I got another one with John Andretti, but yeah, pretty cool little setup. So a little change to the setup here, and the Cutline Cave, if that's what you want to call it. But, yeah, let's just jump straight into it. Let's get into the meat and potatoes here and start talking about what I think is above the cut line. Now, I will say, just off the bat, we are going to have more below the cut lines this week than above the cut lines, but let's just jump right into it. So, first thing above the cut line this week is the option tire. Now, I am going to play a little bit of devil's advocate with the option tire, but let's start off with the positives first, because obviously we're above the cut line. It's a positive part of the show. So, one thing I want to mention here about the option tire is I'm happy that it kind of worked. When you got the option tire on, you got Ryan Preece here who, restarting 33rd, flew through the field. And, if he had a few more laps in stage one, he probably would have gotten the stage win. And, even later on in the race, Ryan Preece, he put it on again, and he was leading the race. Unfortunately, a late race yellow for him kind of derailed that. But why is this above the cut line, and why is this positive? And why do I eventually am going to have that in, a little bit, maybe in the middle, if you will, later on? Let's start off with the positive aspects. Phoenix is not a good track. Even though I put on Twitter at Armani DePaul or X, whatever you want to call it. Even though I put it there, I do want to visit the track. That's more for the aesthetics. Basically being in a track in the middle of the desert. That's what I care more about. Even though the racing is not very good. It hasn't been good in years, even before the next gen car. But with the option tire, it gave us a spice of life for the racetrack. Because, you had guys who, if they were on the option tire, they would just cut their way through the field. It gave more excitement. It gave a new variable to the race that we haven't seen in years. besides the championship, that's the only variable this track really has nowadays. It's very similar to what happened with Richmond last year. Last year at Richmond, when we had the option tire, it brought a whole new variable to the race that made a pretty much a mundane, a dull racetrack exciting. It gave it some flair, some pizzazz, something that we haven't seen at Richmond in over a decade. Now, obviously, the Austin Dillon fiasco, that's its own separate category, and we didn't have that at Phoenix, but it gave something fresh. It made something exciting happen on the racetrack, which we'll get to it. Actually, we'll get to it now, why I think I'd kind of put this slightly above the cut line. If I had a middle of the cut line or exactly on the cut line, it'd probably be more in line with this. But why I think this is just, there's still some work to be done. And the reason that is because the reason I say that is because it took too long for the tires to start wearing out. The option tire is supposed to have two caveats. Wear the tires down and make the car go faster. It accomplished the second one, but not the first one, at least not as fast as I think it should. At least at Richmond, it started wearing down after 30, 40 laps, which is reasonable. We really didn't start seeing wear and tear on the option tire until like 60, almost 70 laps into a run. But by that point, that's basically a stage 1 distance, or half a stage distance. It really should be 20, 30, 40 laps. That way you really have to decide, because if you're just going to run 60 laps with an option tire, you're just going to do what the teams did that were running up front. You're just going to save them till the final stage. And that way you can just run both of them till the end. So by that point, there really is no strategy and there really is no variable to the tire wear. Now you could say, oh, it's all about the tire saving. Well, if you don't really need to start saving tires until 60, 70 laps into a run, again, what's really the point here? And at that point, again, you can't pass at the track anyway, so because everyone is so strung out, of course they're going to save their stuff at that point. So you're still compounding that factor. Again, I think 20 to 30 laps is really that sweet spot as to really that tire wear needs to really start kicking in like that. It's progress. That's why I have it above the cut line, because it's a step in the right direction. But there is still work that needs to be done, but we are in a good direction, and I am going to give NASCAR credit. When they are in the right direction, I want to give them credit where credit is due. So let's bring Will back on here. Will, so we talked about it. Obviously, you and I talk back and forth pretty much every week. But obviously, the option tire, I saw you talk about it on Twitter. Me and you talked about it on Twitter, all that stuff privately. But do you got anything different about the tire wear? Maybe this is exactly what NASCAR needs, 60 to 70 laps. Do you have a different of opinion, or where do you stand on this whole tire wear at Phoenix?
Yeah, I think the tire deal, you're pretty close on it. My biggest thing is I like the strategy that it added because it's Phoenix. So without it, there would have been even less stories going on in the race. Really, if you think about a normal Phoenix race without this tire, I don't know what levels of boring we could have potentially been on. It would have been a high one, though. But I think the issue is they need to go further. It was really cool to see somebody like Ryan Preece go from 33rd to 4th. That was awesome to watch. It was probably one of the highlights of the race. But the problem is the tire just lasted too long. In the ideal situation for me, you want to have the primary yellow tire that is solid for 60, 70, 80 laps. But then if you're going to have that option tire, the red tire, it's way better, but it's only going to last about half as long as that run. So 30, 35 laps at most, and that's stretching it for me. And because you got to have that give and take, because at the end of the race, unfortunately, we all saw it unfold. The top guys were going to save their sets, and they were just going to be on reds the entire third stage. Red versus red versus red. They're all Cup Series drivers. They're wanting to put a tire burn off. They were just faster tires. So then they kind of was just stagnant up front. So I think that's the problem. Headed in the right direction. I think you have to put it above the cut line because it was a good sign. At least NASCAR's doing things. It was an element to encourage passing, and it worked. But if you truly want to get that, like a modified or short track tire fall off kind of game that we hear about in the car school or stuff like that, they're going to have to get way more aggressive with their compound.
Yeah, I want to go into the comment section real quick here. JGR for life, shout out to you, a weekly listener. A Phoenix weekend hasn't been this exciting since 2011. I tend to agree. I mean, maybe you could probably find one here or there. Like, I think the Clint Boyer, Jeff Gordon one was, I think, in 2012. But, I mean, I don't think he's particularly wrong because, again, Phoenix just hasn't been that good of a track. So this at least brings, like, an element to it. And he says, again, here, Bell better be the favorite in betting odds next week. If he runs like he did in Las Vegas in the fall, he definitely will be. But, what do you think about Bell? I feel like I do want to touch on him real quick. 3 in a row. And what's crazy is this is the first time that has happened in the next-gen car. Larson hasn't done it. Harvick didn't do it. Blaney, Bayer, none of them have done it. Christopher Bell is the first. What do you say about Bell's form right now? And he's got to be the championship favorite. But, I feel like we've talked about a lot how we're just really waiting for Bell to really just arrive. Be that dominant force that Byron has shown he could be, that Larson has shown he could be, that guys like Gordon and Johnson have proven in the past. Winning 3 in a row, has Bell officially got to that level for you, or would you say you still need to see a little more from the 20 before you could put him there?
Well, I was tweeting about it before we jumped on here. Bell has been better early in his career than Kyle Larson was. Now, part of that was equipment. Bell has been with Gibbs his entire time. Larson obviously had to stint with the Ganassi, which was okay, but it wasn't great. Ganassi is pretty much like Trackhouse is now. Their cars are good enough to win, but they're not fantastic. But nonetheless, saw somebody else kind of react to that tweet, and they said that they believe Bell is just as good as Larson. He just doesn't extend himself outside of the sport as the same amount of level. I tend to slightly agree. I think Larson still is arguably the best driver on the planet right now. So I'm still going to give Larson that edge because simply we've seen him do things that Bell hasn't done. But I've thought for a long time. I mean, I think Christopher Bell in the NASCAR world may end up being better with more wins and more championships than Larson. I think they're both going to be winning races for a long time. I think people don't put Bell in that category when he arguably should be there. Christopher Bell, I had him, I think, as my number 3 driver heading into the season. Obviously, at this point, he'd probably be number 2, maybe even number 1. I'm still going to give probably Larson that nod, but I'm sold. I'm sold on Bell. I'm sold on the 20 team. He's been doing it for years now. We've got to give him the respect he's deserved.
As a Larson fan, that's a discussion for another day, whether he's on the level of Larson or higher. But again, we'll save that for another day. My personal bias, I would put that below the cut line and not above the cut line or even in the middle of the cut line. But speaking of below the cut line, let's jump straight into it. And I'm going to put it on the screen real quick here. We got the Xfinity finish. Now, contrary to popular belief, I'm not going after Eric Almirola. I'm not going after Alex Bowman. I'm going after, and I know it's not all of you, but I'm going after you fans who think that what Almirola did was dirty. Let's take a look right here. So, Bowman goes in, leaves it open for Almirola. Almirola cuts in. I just want to say something right here before I say anything even further. At this moment, Almirola won the race. At this moment, Eric Almirola won the race. He got Bowman. Bowman got loose or tight or what? I think he got tight going into turn 3. But either way, Almirola had this race won. So anyone who tried saying that Bowman was going to win and Almirola took it away from him, you're wrong. Let's continue playing. One of these days, I'm going to remember to keep that unmuted. I just want to go back here. So, let me get this straight. You guys, someone in the comments, if you guys, if you have this opinion, let me know. Maybe I'm missing something. But are you really going to try to convince me that this was dirty? Like, let's look at the comment section right here. Guys just don't race it out clean anymore, do they? Overtime sucks. I do agree overtime sucks. We'll get to that later on. That was dirty. I wouldn't say that was clean, but okay. Bowman left it open. Can't blame the part-timer for trying. Yes, Bowman left it open. If anything, I'd put that more on Alex Bowman for even giving Almirola a chance to make that work. Why do I have a feeling that you're saying the part-timer for trying is an insult? Because if that's the case, he's a multi-time Xfinity winner, and he's retired, and it's like... Anyway, moving on. BS finished by mapping know that walling a guy coming to the checkered flag is okay. Hopefully NASCAR remembers this for tomorrow's race. Oh my god. Okay, this is where I'm going to start ranting. What do you want? What do you fans really want? Because if this little contact, let's call it what it is, folks, this little contact where if you look at photos, both cars are barely scathed. If that is your tipping point for saying it's dirty racing, for saying Almirola sucks, for saying that he's a dirty driver, stop watching that. I'm just going to quote what Kyle Busch said, don't even watch. Don't even watch. But I guarantee you, if you look at what Bowman did to Hamlin at Martinsville in 2021, you guys would be ecstatic saying, hey, that's just hard racing, man. That is what it is. How are you guys going to have an outcry for a door bang that we've seen hundreds of times in NASCAR? You know what I saw? You know what I thought of? So, when I first heard the outcry, I'm like thinking, okay, what was it about? You know, you think, oh, Almirola must have turned Alex Bowman, put him in, like really put him in the wall, and just cruise on his way. Something really dirty. Like what Ty Gibbs did to Brandon Jones back in 2021, I believe, or 2022. And I see this? This is what y'all are complaining about? Like, folks, Almirola hadn't won anyway. He was ahead. Yeah, Bowman is ahead a little bit here, but Almirola was going to get the runoff anyway, first of all. And if that is all it takes for you, just a slight little hit to the wall, I'm a Larson fan, or Hendrick fan, whatever, you name it. But I guarantee you, some of you same guys probably would say that what Kyle Larson did to Austin Cindric was fine. Hey, man, it's just hard racing. Or what Chase Elliott did to Corey LaJoie back in Atlanta a couple years ago was fine. Hey, man, it's just hard racing. But we're complaining about this? That's hard racing. This is just this is just hard racing. That's all this is. So I don't see what all the outcry is about. You guys trying to say Almirola is a dirty driver. You guys are trying to say that this is like a terrible, like this is a bad look on NASCAR. What are you watching? Seriously. If this is dirty race, I'm not going to say it's clean, you know, and say, yeah, I know Almirola said in the post-race, I knew I was going to have to use him up. Okay, yeah, it's the last lap for a win. Of course, you're going to use him up, but you're not dumping the guy. But you guys want to act like he just straight up dumped him, and that's just delusional. All you guys out there who are saying that Almirola is dirty, all you guys out there who are saying that Almirola is a terrible driver for this X, Y, and Z, y'all are just delusional. Like, if that is if that is really setting you off, go watch F1, man. Go watch the winner win by 30 seconds. Then you won't, but you won't have that. So, let me bring Will on here because I know he's got a different opinion, and we talked about this earlier. But, Will, what do you think about this? Because, yeah, you heard what I had to say. But, am I off here? Like, is there just something from this finish that I'm just not seeing? Because it just looks like, yeah, Almirola adored him, but it's like no one got hurt. No one got really wrecked. It was the last lap. Like, is there just something I'm not seeing?
The only thing I disagree with you on is I don't know if Almirola necessarily automatically wins it right there. But I think the fan base is just getting soft with some of the reactions to the finish. Friday night, we had the ARCA finish with Brent Cruz and Butterbean, and people were losing their minds for a second. I looked at the replay. I said, I don't even know if they touched. And then we go to Saturday. Obviously, I missed it. I was at Anderson calling the races. Went back home, saw the replay. And I get it. You know, ideally, you love a clean photo finish to the line, but I think it was hard racing. Almirola drove it in. Bowman gave him the entire two bottom lanes. I'm really not sure why he did that. And then Almirola just got loose. He was driving hard. The car kicked sideways. I don't know why people have just skipped over that part. It would have been different if Almirola just literally pitched his car into the wall, into the 17. That's not what happened. I mean, he was racing hard. He was going up the hill. The car kicked sideways. He saves it. They bobble. I don't really know why Almirola said he knew he was going to rough him up, because I really don't think that was an intentional hit. I don't think Almirola had any intentions of hitting him at that point. It just happened when the car got loose. Bowman makes contact with the wall. I've seen people try to say he jumped the 17 car. If that is your definition of getting jumped, you have not been watching NASCAR long enough. That car, I'm pretty sure, could have continued if it needed to. And again, remember, also still finished second. Jumped is when you sit there and just destroy a guy. They lose a bunch of positions. They go on about their day, and he finishes 26th when he was leading on the last lap. That is far from what happened on Saturday.
Thank you for letting me know that there is actually people out there who aren't delusional for what that. I mean, thankfully there's people in the chat as well, like JJR for life again. Shout out to you, my man. And Bowman is too much of a crybaby. You must have forgotten he wrecked Hamlin to win Martinsville. I mean, I don't think Bowman. I mean, it's just hard racing. I mean, like you said, I think Bowman is fine. I think Bowman is fine. Yeah, they're all Hendrick fans. Chelsea boy 2014. Probably. I mean, I'm not worried about Hendrick winning an Xfinity race as a part-time team. I want to see them win cup races, but, to each their own. I saw one comment here talking about Ricky Craven and Kurt Busch. I'm trying to find that right here. Yep, JJR for life. These people never watched Craven and Busch in 2003. Exactly. By that logic, they would have lost their minds at Ricky Craven and Kurt Busch in 2003.
Oh, 100%. I think that did cross my mind, and I think it's just situational, man. I think Bowman, he pulls a lot of opinions out of different guys. I've been one of those opinions before, and me and you have private conversations where we've had opinions on Alex Bowman. People have opinions on Eric Almirola, but at the end of the day, I don't see how anybody really cares about that finish. I was excited about it for Phoenix. I mean, I don't see how you get disappointed at something like that. To me, again, I don't even know why we're having the conversation, because to me, it was just another finish. It was a great finish, and it was an exciting finish.
Thank you. This is a non-conversation that everyone has turned into a conversation. Now I have to turn into a conversation too. So here we are. Well, let's go a few more in the chat here. Chelsea Boy 2014. Good racing. The people were still yelling at each other. Exactly. Thank you. The Leaded Projects, we have been using up a car every year on the finish. I mean, but that's NASCAR. It happens. I mean, you're on the last lap. You see the win right in front of you. You just use up a few fenders. It is what it is. It happens. So, I'm done talking about this. I'm tired of talking about this. But you mentioned it earlier about the ARCA finish, and I'm about to blow some steam. Because this is our second segment below the cut line. And spoiler alert, we got 3 below the cut line this week. So here's number 2. If you saw me on Twitter, white flag for Brendan Queen, Butterbean. And he looks like he's going to cruise to his second win in a row. 2 ARCA races, 2 wins in a row. But meanwhile, we're going to have a spin here. So,
Flag is out on the final lap after Tim Viens has gone.
I didn't mean to unmute that, by the way, just so you can hear that. That was a caution. Keep in mind, folks, this is the white flag lap. I did mention earlier, shout out to the comments saying that overtime sucks. I agree. I hate overtime. I'm going to say that right now. I've never liked overtime. If the race is 500 miles, end it at 500 miles. The whole point of overtime, if we want to go back to stick and ball sports, that's when the game is tied. Because there has to be a winner, there has to be a loser. Overtime has a purpose there. A legit purpose. When overtime in racing serves no purpose but for entertainment. Because for some reason, I'm a racing purist, so this is why I'm saying this. I believe in racing at its purest level. But for some reason, like a lot of racing fans, especially NASCAR fans, have this idea that every race has to finish under green. Every race has to finish under green. Why? Why does every race have to finish under green per se? Oh, because it's exciting. It's what the fans deserve. Okay, so so let's just say this. All you out there who hate the playoffs, but I'm one of them, by the way. The fans deserve a close championship battle, right? So we should all love the championship 4 because it's a close championship battle. If that's what we deserve, I'm not saying we don't deserve that, but it's a bad reason, in my opinion. If the race ends under yellow, it ends under yellow. It happens. It's called racing. And let me explain to you something else here. After this, we had another run at overtime. And you got some instances like you're at a restrictor plate track. Or you're at even maybe a road course where you just go Nashville 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 overtimes. But we're so adamant at getting a green flag finish that we start to turn the race itself into a clown show. Like I just don't get it. Back to ARCA, might I add. The fact that you can have that the race is required basically to finish under green is a horrible rule in the ARCA rulebook. A horrible rule. ARCA doesn't need to be ending under green as a requirement. The series is already a crapshoot more times than not as it is. And we're just adding fuel to the fire with a one-lap shootout. I will never understand one-lap shootouts, might I add. Why are we adding 10, 15, 20 minutes to a race just for 15 to 20 seconds of action? It makes absolutely no sense. And Butterbean got robbed. I'm going to tell you that right now. Butterbean got robbed. I'm not saying what Cruz did nothing wrong. He knew, he got the win. He earned it. But Butterbean got robbed because we have a rule that is ridiculous. We have a rule that is ridiculous. Because why are we having a one-lap overtime on the white flag lap? White flag. Last lap. But it's not the last lap. It's like the Daytona 500. 500 miles. But it's not 500 miles. And then we got a big one in overtime. And then we're under a red flag for another hour. And then, there's 5 cars at the finish. But we got a green flag. We just wasted everyone's time. In my opinion, that's all overtime does. There are good overtime finishes. I'm not denying that. But as a racing purist, if you are going, if the race is 500 miles, just end it at 500 miles. Just do it. This overtime, it serves no real purpose. Stick in ball sports, overtime has a purpose. Like in baseball, I know it's not overtime, it's extra innings, but it's more or less the same thing. It's to declare a true winner. Football, basketball, same thing. Racing, overtime has no clear purpose but entertainment. It's a gimmick. Nothing more, nothing less. Alright, well, let me get you back in here. I mean, I've never liked overtime, ever. I know you and I have difference of opinions on that. But, I know you mentioned it before in the past. But talk about what you think about overtime and more, and, a little bit about overtime in general. And the ARCA rule as a whole. Because please tell me we can agree that there should never be overtime on the white flag lap.
Armani, my friend. I love when you are wrong about something. Now, wrong with a caveat. For one, I enjoy overtime. The reason I enjoy overtime, now I do disagree with some of the calamities sometimes, is to me, I think about the fans in attendance. You paid a lot of money for NASCAR tickets. You deserve to see the quote-unquote best in the world finish under green and give a quality finish. Now, probably needs to be some caveats to that. In local racing, you'll see this. We have a lot of divisions called Young Guns. It's literally for first-time racers, people that have not been in certain cars, things of that nature. They'll have a couple of different rules. They might have fewer laps. They might have some. So you have to kind of watch that. But other than that, they have a different rule book they kind of play with. And so I think that's what you have to do with ARCA. Don't give the ARCA drivers as many opportunities to make bad decisions. And the further up the ladder you go, there's a little bit more leniency. In ARCA, probably doesn't need to be overtime. Now, I do disagree with the final lap. To me, race fans are so conditioned that by now that the white flag means the race is over, so just end it. White flag comes out, the race is over. For conditions, you don't have to explain it. It makes perfect sense to pretty much everybody. And this is what's frustrating about NASCAR, is they put themselves in these situations to now, it's going to be spicy. We had to make another call. So the race isn't officially over. Now it's going to be a crap show. We'll rephrase it to that. So in terms of overtime as a whole, I think it should progressively kind of get looser and looser as you go up the ladder. In the NASCAR Cup Series, you should get a green flag finish. The tickets are the most costly of them. The drivers are the best there is in the sport. They should finish under green. But I can see some tweaks, Xfinity Truck ARCA. Butterbean should have won that race. Caution, of course, got him. People should not be mad at Brent Cruz. Brent Cruz, I don't even know if he touched him. I guess they did, but whatever. But you're wrong. Overtime needs to be in racing in certain circumstances.
I wholeheartedly disagree. I mean, you could say we should end under. The fans deserve a green flag. I'm not saying they don't, but to say something like we're required to end under green or things like that, instead of getting mad at the sanctioning body of a racing series. By the way, you're frozen. By the way, but oh, there you go. You're back. So instead of getting mad at the sanctioning body for saying like, the race ended under yellow or whatever. Why don't we get mad at the drivers for not being able to not crash or spin or wreck with 1 lap to go or with 3 laps to go? You're almost done. Like, I see more like that. I'm like, you can't hold it for a few more miles? Like, I see it more that way in the sense than getting mad at the sanctioning body of like, oh, dang, we're ending under caution. Yeah, it's a bummer, but it's like, it happens. Like, it just happens. Like, boo-hoo.
Well, I think you have to blame both of them. For one, yes, you want the drivers to go out and think with their heads, but NASCAR puts these drivers in these situations, especially with the top 3 divisions, with stuff like winning you're in and all these kind of things. You've pretty much told these drivers, we don't care about what happens the rest of the regular season. We want you to do what you have to do right now. And do it right now. And if you do it right now, it doesn't matter the consequences. You can put yourself in the postseason. You can win a race. You're a hero. It doesn't matter of any of the other effects. So it's a give and take. Drivers do need to have some common sense, but at the same time, NASCAR makes this rule book, and we have seen them gravitate towards the entertainment side of motorsports the last decade or so. Drivers are going to make driver decisions when they have something to gain on the other side of it.
Well, speaking of driver decisions, I don't know if we call this necessarily a driver decision, but let's go to our final below the cut line. And this originally, you and I talked about this. We went back and forth on whether this should have been on the show or not. Originally, I wasn't going to put it because I thought it was like a non-story. Like, I just didn't think it was worth really talking about. But now I have to. Catherine Legg. Now, like I mentioned before, originally, I wasn't going to put this on the show. Yes, she's the first female driver to run in NASCAR since Danica Patrick in 2018. Yes, there was, talk about whether she should be able to race or not or whatever. To me, it's like, okay, it's not the first time someone outside NASCAR has made their debut in the Cup Series. She's running for a backmarker team. She was probably going to run last. It had no real effect on the sport. Therefore, I figured it really isn't much to talk about. But kind of like the Bowman Almirola thing, we really like to turn nothing. Well, there's a little bit of substance. First female in 7 years. There is a little bit of substance to that, which is still pretty cool. But we love to turn nothing, or close to nothing, into something. And something went wrong right here. So, give me 1 second, folks. I think we just lost Will here. So let's see what happened real quick, and we'll be right back. Okay, we got him back. Well, either way, we'll get that sorted out in a moment. But let me get to below the cut line here because, yeah, I have a lot to say about this. So, Catherine Legg, again. Let's start off with this comment right here. Batman jump scare, exactly. So, Catherine Legg, 2 spins. One of them took out Daniel Suarez. Not the cleanest debut for Catherine Legg, to say the least. However, I'm going to pick on these comments one by one, because I want to make sure you guys realize how ridiculous a lot of these comments sound. Catherine Legg, 97 laps to go. And then you got the comment over here, but Mike Wallace can't race at Daytona. Sometimes I really just wonder what NASCAR fans think about, or just fans in general think about when they type this stuff down. Because let me explain this to you guys right here. This is Catherine Legg's stats right here, recently. So, this is in sports car racing, not in any way, shape, or form similar to NASCAR, unless you talk about road course racing with the next-gen car. But I've seen comments and people trying to question Catherine Legg's, like, eligibility. Should she be in the Cup Series? Should she be making her debut in the Cup Series? She's got a couple wins under her belt. In the IMSA Sports Car Championship, the highest level of sports car racing in the United States. No, it is not stock car racing. However, it is still a top-level motorsport. And I was talking with my friends about this earlier throughout the week, but I know ovals are different than road courses and sports cars and stock cars and you name it, but generally speaking, if you know how to drive, you're going to be able to put 2 and 2 together. And let's not act like Catherine Legg is a scrub, because look at the ones. 1, 2, 3, 4 wins. Granted, they're, nearly 7-8 years ago, but a win is still a win. That's more than what Mike Wallace has done. And I don't mean to pick on Mike Wallace, but comment, you have to compare. But the biggest one I want you guys to look at. Look at the date right here. 2024. Last year, she ran 2 races. Again, seat time is seat time. So, she's gotten seat time in a car. So you got a race-winning driver who's experienced in not just, I just want to say, not just sports cars. I mean, Formula E, Indy 500. Again, last year, if you run the Indy 500 and you make the show, I think you're qualified to run a stock car race at Phoenix. Again, IndyCar in general. Look at all the motorsports results. And again, I'll keep it recent. But here you go. Let's compare that to Mike Wallace. Let's see. When was his last race? 2020. At the Daytona Road Course. Last Cup race. 2015 Daytona 500. A decade ago. Last truck race. 14 years ago. And even if we want to go to his motorsports results, let's go all the way down here. His last Cup race, again, 2015. Let's go even further. His last Xfinity start again, 3 road course starts in 2020. And then trucks, obviously, and then ARCA 2006. You get the point. So why are we trying to compare Catherine Legge, who is a more recently accomplished driver, who has actual seat time in the last 365 days? Why are we trying to compare her to a driver who has, oh yeah, and she's running at a 1 mile track, might I add, with a backmarker team? Why are we trying to compare her to a driver who hasn't run anything in 5 years, half a decade, and who hasn't run a premier, the top level, in over 10 years? How can you compare that? That is one of the worst comparisons I've seen, period. Like, come on. I would still rather take Catherine Legge in a stock car than Mike Wallace, because Catherine Legge has been in something. And by the way, Catherine Legge, let me go to her age here. She's 44 years old. Oh, she's 44 years old. Not a spring chicken, but, you know, a decent age for a driver. Mike Wallace, meanwhile, is 65. He's going to be 66 tomorrow. No disrespect to Mike Wallace, but comparing a 44-year-old driver, again, let's go back here, a 44-year-old driver who is much more accomplished recently, and I go back to the recent, because that is the big thing here, who has more recent accomplishments and experience, different car, doesn't matter. Car is a car. To a over 20-plus-year-old more driver in age who hasn't run a premier stock car race in over a decade. This comment is absurd. This comment is silly. This comment below the cut line in every way, shape, or form. The DEI. I'm not even gonna say what I want to say, because most of y'all should know. This one, I am so shocked she wrecked again. If I didn't know any better, I would think she has absolutely no relevant experience racing stock cars at the highest level. That is something. I will say that. If you want to talk about how, you know, stock car racing is such a different animal that, you know, it doesn't matter what other series you've raced in, you should still have some sort of stock car racing experience, which I believe she's raced in ARCA in the past, then, okay, now we have a conversation. Now we have an actual conversation. Again, I'm still of the opinion that, you know, if you race in the Indy 500 recently, if you raced in Premier Motorsports, period, like, why are we having this conversation with Helio Castroneves? Yeah, he's a 4-time Indy 500 winner. Okay, let me go to another example. Connor Daly, when he drives the 50 car. Why are we talking smack on Connor Daly? I think he ran the Cup Series before he ran the Xfinity Series. But we're not having these conversations with about Connor Daly back then? If Max Verstappen wants to run the Daytona 500. Actually, no, because he's a multi-time world champion. What's a good example? Oscar Piastri, because he's only a 2-time F1 winner. If he wants to run the Daytona 500, are we going to give the same backlash to him if he spins or something? I'm not trying to defend Catherine Legge's performance, but again, we're turning something into something out of nothing. I don't even want to go through the rest of these comments, because then we just get to a whole other type of discussion that can get controversial. So let's see if Will is still on here. Give me 1 second, folks. Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what happened and what went on with him, but let's see here if we can bring him back. There we go. Hey, there he is. Yeah, I don't know what happened with you, but hey, we got you back. And most importantly, let's talk about the Catherine Legge discussion. You know, we talked about it before, how, you know, you thought I should have honestly talked more about this. Again, kind of bad that Alex Bowman Almirola. I thought, again, she's making her debut. She's running for Live Fast. She's going to run last anyway. But this is blown up. I mean, again, is there just something I'm missing here with the whole Catherine Legge backlash? Because, in my opinion, it really should have as much substance as Bowman versus Almirola.
I think the biggest thing with Catherine Legge is, from what I see, the pushback on social media seems to be that I think NASCAR just pumped it up a lot this week. Big PR hit, first woman in a long time to be in the Cup Series. And Legge is a well-known driver in sports cars and all those other things, so it is a notable name in the industry. So it's a big deal. I think it also, I didn't even know this until she said it, apparently it was like International Women's Day was yesterday, so that kind of just played into the weekend. So I think social media reacted to that. Also, do you have the Mike Wallace deal? I agreed with Mike Wallace not getting to race. It's been 10 years. I mean, I just think anytime a guy has not been in a car that long, and I know that I'm sure I would be biased in certain situations, but I would also understand if NASCAR get pushback. You have to think, what if Jeff Gordon all of a sudden said, I want to come run a race? Well, to me, there at least probably needs to be a test session. And I'm fine, but guess what? NASCAR doesn't allow testing. So, there's not an easy, smart way to do it. So I think the more the pushback from Legge, if you're going to push back against it, should be that there's probably other drivers you would rather see get Cup opportunities than her. Guys like Justin Allgaier, Austin Hill, Jesse Love, those kind of guys.
Yeah.
But they're just not in the conversation. That's not the way the Cup Series works anymore. Catherine Legge was able to bring sponsorship money. You dang sure don't need to be mad at her. She just wants to race. and I'm glad she wants to race in NASCAR and be in the Cup Series. NASCAR needs to come up with a better, more sound approval process. But if you look at her resume, she's good enough to be approved.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I know she's not flashy. She's not Scott Dixon or Leo Castroneves, but Catherine Legge has been in race cars last year, this year in the ARCA race and stuff like that. So, the pushback really shouldn't come from the fact that she was approved to be in the car. If anything, you could say, man, I'd really like to see some other people get a Cup opportunity, but I'm fine with it. I could care less either way. People that are upset with her or NASCAR, you can be upset for NASCAR just because some of their approvals are a little wonky and weird, but I personally don't have a problem with it.
Now, what would you say about, again, I mentioned before, stock car racing is such a different animal than other forms of racing. Even though, again, I think if you run the Indy 500 and you qualify for the race, I think that warrants you to, make a start at Phoenix in a Cup car in Live Fast equipment. I mean, Murph Turn 2 said it best. Can't expect the Live Fast car with the first-time driver to do any good. Exactly. But, should we put that into account with basically saying it doesn't matter if you run sports cars, F1, IndyCar, dirt, you name it. NASCAR is so different as a motorsport that you have to do something to prove it. The requirement process has to be tweaked to be something different.
I mean, it's tough, from a reality standpoint. I know in dirt racing, all there is an age limit. But if you can build a super late model and make the 24, 25 car field, you get to go race. There's no have to have this many laps, have to have this checked off, at least not that I know. And I would like to think the Cup Series is held to a super high standard. And honestly, it pretty much is because of the financials it takes to compete. But if I were controlling things, I would say that if you want to run a Cup race, you have to go to a test at Charlotte Motor Speedway or a track around wherever they can set it up, and you have to meet certain times. But I think that should be for anybody, whether Jeff Gordon wanted to come back, whether Catherine Legge's trying to make her debut, whether Scott Dixon wants to come and run. And if those drivers are as talented as they are supposed to be, they're going to be able to get those times. It's almost like, they have those times, the minimum lap speeds. Most of the minimum lap speeds are a joke. And so as long as you can meet that in the test, come and race. Because it's hard to sit there and try to argue that a world-class driver like a Max Verstappen or Lewis Hamilton, you're going to tell them no.
Yeah.
They're talented enough race car drivers that they can go run Cup cars. But I do agree it is a completely different animal, especially if they were to go like Helio did and make your debut at Daytona. I mean, there's no other form of racing on the planet like restrictor plate racing or tapered spacer racing. For the people that want to have the term
for the technical term.
For the technical term, that's the only thing I would change. I wish there could be some kind of natural test The problem is, there used to be the kind of mandate that you had to have this many ARCA starts, this many starts here or there. Sponsorships don't like that. When the sponsorship pool is dried up so much, it's hard to tell a sponsor, well, I need to run a race here, and a race there, and then I can go to the big show. They're not going to go for that. NASCAR knows that. So that's why they've kind of shifted away from a lot of that stuff too.
I could agree on a lot of that. Again, I think if you've done enough in other series, I mean, a car is a car at the end of the day. You're still turning the wheels, still hitting the pedals, all that. If you know how to drive a race car, you should be fine, in my opinion. But at least at the top level. I'm not saying a guy at K1 speed needs to go make cup starts. That's not what I'm saying. But yeah, I think Catherine, it's a whole, like, people just overblowing it for, no reason. Actually, there are some reasons why people are doing it, but I'm not going to get into that here. But, anyway, so, again, 3 below the cut line's a little more negative this week than compared to only 1 above the cut line. But, let's get a little more positive. At least try to get a little more positive here. So, it is time for my favorite segment of the week, and that is Race Weekend Rankings. Again, now, if you guys want to follow along, 2 links in the description. Link number 1, link for Race Weekend Rankings for this weekend at Phoenix Raceway. We got ARCA, we got Xfinity, and we got Cup to Rank. You see right here, link in the description, so you can follow along and tag us at Daily Downforce with your Race Weekend Rankings for this week, as well as for the 2025 season. You can follow us along there. Again, both links are in the description. If you guys decide to play along, tag us on Daily Downforce. Maybe ours is similar, maybe ours is different. We can agree to disagree, or we can agree to agree. You don't know. So, we got 3 races at Phoenix here. We got ARCA, that happened Friday, Xfinity that happened yesterday, and then, of course, we had the Cup race that happened today. So, let's jump straight into it. Let's start off with the ARCA race. If you guys saw my reaction to the finish, I got to put it last. Even the race as a whole was okay. I'm not a big fan of Phoenix. I think the track itself is just not good racing. And even the ARCA race was not bad. I mean, you had, Cruz and Butterbean. I will say, what Butterbean did with Cruz, I thought was amazing, just as a driver. What do I mean by that? You're up front, and, you're kind of giving Cruz a little bit of hope. It's like, oh, I'm starting to catch him. I'm within now 8 tenths, 9 tenths. And then Butterbean just hits the gas again, and then he's like, nope, bye-bye. Great race management for Butterbean, in my opinion. Shows that he knows how to manage the race when up front. If only we had better rules to finish the race, he would have gotten the win he deserved. But to me, the race was just a mid-race as is, and then you put into one of the worst rules in the rule book I've seen just in motorsports, period. It has to go in last. I'm going to put the Xfinity Series in second spot. Again, just another race I thought was okay. Again, Bowman Almirola making a non-controversy a controversy, but it was just another okay race. There were battles here, there were battles there, but overall, I mean, again, I'm not a big fan of Phoenix. I mean, that's all I really have to say. Yeah, you had the Austin Hill, Cole Custer incident. You had, a couple of things here, a couple things there, but again, it's Phoenix. So something's got to go number 1, and it would be the Cup race in this instance. Again, the only reason I'm really putting this above the Xfinity Series is because that option tire did add a little more flair to the race. It's a step in the right direction, but I still need to see more. Other than that, the option tire, Catherine Legge, Bell winning 3 in a row is cool. The finish was really nice. Between Bell, Hamlin, and Larson at the end. But the racing as a whole, I wasn't entertained. Maybe if we had more tire fall off, it would have been more fun. But, again, just wasn't my cup of tea. Phoenix isn't my cup of tea. Again, I love to go to the track just to me, Xfinity is like Pocono. I want to go there just because the track looks cool. I want to see the venue more than see an actual race at the track, if that makes any sense. But that's my race weekend rankings. Again, let me know your race weekend rankings. Follow the link in the description, and tell us your race weekend rankings on social media. Let's go over here to our 2025 list. I'm going to be honest with y'all. That's interesting. The code of races aren't on here. Weird. Well, if you guys didn't follow us along last week, I did have Circuit of the Americas at S tier, the Cup race, the Xfinity race, I believe I had at B tier as well. So just imagine Coda up here for Cup, Coda Xfinity at B tier. Not like any of that matters because I'm going to be honest, F tier. Worst rule in motorsports. One of the worst rules I've ever seen. Disgusting. You put a C finish with one of the worst rules I've ever seen. F tier. Xfinity. Probably at the back half of C tier. You know, maybe put it above, you know, Daytona. You can argue it. But, you know what? I'll just do it for here. And then the Cup race, I'll just put it at the top of C tier. I thought this week in terms of racing was just not great. You know, I didn't expect much out of Phoenix. I still don't expect much out of Phoenix. And I think we'll get a much better product next week out of Las Vegas. But there you go. Again, imagine Coda here and Coda Cup in S tier, Coda Xfinity in B tier. But that is the 2025 for Race Weekend rankings so far. Let's bring Will back in here and see what he has. Will, what did you think about my rankings? I know you were at Anderson, so you didn't get to see too much over the weekend. But, I mean, from clips maybe you've seen from Xfinity, maybe from ARCA, just the racing as a whole, what was your thought about the weekend?
Well, I mean, ARCA is obviously ARCA. The finish kind of spoiled a little bit of that. And it looks like, you know how ARCA is. There's only 4 or 5 cars usually that can really win the race anyway. So, ARCA, it gets tough sometimes for them to put on a show. So, probably correct on that. Again, I missed Xfinity, but I would imagine Xfinity may have been the best race of the weekend. I didn't get to see it, but I'm just so used to Xfinity being that. You had the Austin Hill calamity. You had the finish. So it seemed like at least those moments were exciting. I get to see the full thing. And like I said, I think the Cup race was middle of the road. I mean, I think it was an expected Phoenix race. The finish ended up being better than we all thought because of the late caution. The tires added a little bit to it. But I think Phoenix... As Jamie McMurray said, Phoenix hadn't had a good race in forever, and that's probably about where Phoenix is. The best race you're going to get at Phoenix is a middle of the road Phoenix on the year. So I think you're spot on with them. I can't really disagree much. There's nothing that I'm going to think is really memorable from today, and I'm just really hoping that Vegas next week puts on a show, and I think it probably will.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I mean, again, Phoenix, it's Phoenix. I mean, that's all we have to say. I mean, Phoenix is Phoenix.
Yep.
Oh,
Phoenix
yeah.
Is Phoenix, and lucky for us, it determines our champion.
Hopefully this is the last year it actually does it. We could go back.
Good job, NASCAR.
Yeah, good job, NASCAR. Bring it back to Miami, and I'm not just saying that because I'm a South Florida native. But, I mean, that's the problem with Phoenix. So it's like, it feels like there's just, you know, Coda, we have so much to talk about. Even the 2 super speedways. Vegas will have a lot to talk about. But Phoenix are just... Bell won 3 in a row. Everything I mentioned. But it's like... The racing, there's just not much to talk about. Oh, it is... It's...
Well, I mean, I'm partially glad because... The first 3 weeks are such kind of wild cards. So it's good to have that just... A regular Cup race on a Sunday event. We need to have those occasionally. I just think it's Phoenix. Phoenix is just not great. They need to have one day a year. It does not need to be the finale.
I could agree with that. It's never going to have one day a year because of what they, you know, all the renovations. But right. I can agree with that. Well, that's all we really have today for the Cutline. And before everyone goes, you already know what to do. Every time we bring a guest on this show, you guys see the X icon and the TikTok icon down. You see Will pointing at it right there with his tag. So everyone... Go follow NASCAR_opinion on both TikTok and X or Twitter, whatever term you want to use. But, Will, just tell us about what you do and tell me a little bit about how you interviewed the Rockin' Man, Ryan Newman.
Yeah, so when I'm not spending time on social media or doing my regular job, I announce at Anderson Motor Speedway, local racetrack in Anderson, South Carolina. If you don't know where that's at, it's the upstate of South Carolina, Greenville, Spartanburg area, probably 30 minutes from there. But the Smart Modifieds were in the house this past week, so both Dillners were there. I got to speak to Bob and Matt Dillner while I was there. Tommy Baldwin's boys are running. Jamie McMurray's son Carter was racing, and Landon Huffman, cool guy. Got to talk to him. He's a Panthers fan, so we kind of hit on that. But Ryan Newman was one of the big drivers there, and I had told them earlier in the day. I said, "Hey, we've got a little bit of a break between practice and qualifying and all that. If you don't mind, can I come catch a word with you?" Seemed to be cool about it, and just kind of took about 50 seconds to a minute, chatted with him. Seemed to be a nice guy, and it was his first time ever there. So
Nice.
easy questions when something like that happens, because you don't have to think about it too much. You can just easy question. What do you think your first time out? What makes the modified cool? And went on about our day.
Nice. Hey, love it. Love that. That is awesome. That is awesome. So
Yeah, it was fun.
yeah, so everyone, go check out NASCAR_opinion. If you've been on NASCAR Twitter for any length of time, you've probably seen him more times than not. But yeah, NASCAR opinion on Twitter and TikTok. Go check him out. Will, thanks so much for coming on, man.
As always, man. Even you've been right a little bit lately, but I gotta call you wrong occasionally every now and then too. It's a pleasure being on, and hopefully next week we get a few more things that are above the cut line.
Hopefully. Everybody, thank you so much for tuning into this weekend of the Cut Line. You guys can follow me. You guys have my Instagram, my Twitter. I don't put my X on there because I basically self-promoted so much nowadays anyway, but it's all the same thing, at Armani DePaul. Make sure you guys follow the Daily Downforce as well on all social media platforms, YouTube, Instagram, X, Twitter, you name it. We got a lot of content there. Head to dailydownforce.com as well. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We're going to wave the checkered flag. This is the Cut Line. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next week, Las Vegas.